Hi everybody, thanks for joining. If you're with us already, we're just about to get started in a minute, and we're just going to hang on for that minute just to give the chance for everyone else to join, and then we'll kick off promptly in just under a minute's time. Okay, guys, thanks everyone for joining. I think we're good to go. So I'm going to dive straight in. So first of all, hi, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's QuarkXPress webinar. Great to have you with us. My name is Dan Aston. I work for Quark Software, and today we're going to be looking at 6 new things you need to know in QuarkXPress 2023. Our expert today is Martin Turner, longtime power user of QuarkXPress. He's been using the product for many, many years. And he's also experienced marketer, PR and branding expert, so he brings a very well-rounded viewpoint of how to get the most out of QuarkXPress. We're going to be doing the main content of today's session, and then there's going to be a Q&A, question and answer session at the end. So as we're going along, please do submit your questions into the Q&A box you should see, and we'll pick those up at the end of the main session. And the last thing I wanted to say from my side, just on the intro, is if you're joining us today, do tag us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Instagram, wherever your favorite place to hang out or your favorite social media network of choice. We just love to see who's joining us and see who's on board with us. So with that, I won't spend any more time. Martin, I'll pass over to you for the main content of today's session.
Okay, thank you very much. Hope everybody can hear me. So we're in QuarkXPress 2023. It's still, of course, 2022. And actually, Quark is going to be incrementally upgrading anyway. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what have we got already? Now, there is something for everyone, but not everything is for everyone. So if you look at a feature and say, well, that's no good to me, that's fine. But there's some real useful advances here. And I'll also try to pick up about how they connect to other things. So the first thing that will please Mac users is that this is now Mac OS Ventura compatible. And you could say, well, why couldn't you make it compatible straight out of the box? Apple does keep changing things right to the last minute. In this particular case, there were some issues with creating colors that were causing crashes in 2022. It's now compatible. It also works with earlier OS versions. So if anyone's told you, no, it doesn't work with whatever, I'm using it right now on Monterey. I haven't upgraded to Ventura yet. I'm one of those people who only upgrade when I have to. And on my other machine, which is an Intel machine, and this is one of the silicon machine, I'm actually still using Mojave, and QuarkXPress 2023 works fine on Mojave. I've also come across somebody who's using it in High Sierra, so don't worry about that. Now, I'm not going to knock anybody else, but I will say, in case you're wondering, it still comes with the complete current Pantone color set, including the Pantone extended gamut colors. Now, you might say, well, nobody uses Pantone anymore. Well, maybe that's right, but certainly when you've got legacy documents, you do need to be able to get your Pantone colors even to convert them. So if you're also using other software where you've suddenly been told that you now have to pay a monthly fee to have Pantone, that is not the case with QuarkXPress. And again, talking about legacy software, if you've got older documents, so up to version 6, you need a converter for that. Now, that converter was supplied with QuarkXPress. I think it still is, but it's 32-bit, so it doesn't work past Mojave. But if you've got those older documents up to version 6, from version 7 it will just open, but up to version 6, you can go to Help and if you go down to legacy document converter, you should then be able to convert, and it works online. So what's going to happen is it'll come up with a browse box, and you browse the document you want to convert, they get sent to Quark, and they convert it for you. Obviously on a Windows PC, that's no problem. You can still use the legacy converter you've already got. Now, I do need to say that I've come across a couple of people who've got older documents that are still causing problems. If you have a problem of any kind, contact technical support. Technical support want to squash bugs. They love that. That's what they live for. And they won't get squashed unless you tell them about them. So I always tell Quark about my technical problems. Quite often, I would say 7 times out of 10, it's user error, and they have to point out something quite basic, which I've done wrong, but still 3 times out of 10, they fix something for me, and I'm very grateful for it. Older documents are always a problem. I used to use SciQuest drives. These were incredibly fragile, and you may have older corrupt documents. But even then, technical support has at times rescued me with corrupt documents. So always go back to them. So we said 6 things, and this is not one of the 6 because it clearly doesn't apply to Windows PC users. So the first thing is long documents to 10,000 pages. Now, you might be saying, whoever is going to do a long document of 10,000 pages? Even if you're going to print the entire Bible in large print, it's not going to be 10,000 pages. The Lord of the Rings plus the Silmarillion, plus the Hobbit, plus all the other things, all together, if you were going to do this in one ridiculous volume, would still not be 10,000 pages. Well, the old limit was 2,000. And what we're finding is that people who are doing raffle tickets and name badges and things like that really did need a bit more than 2,000. So the limit's now 10,000. And if you need more than 10,000, tell Quark about it, because they'll be very interested to know your use case. But there are still other things you can do, even if you have more than 10,000. In fact, we're now able to, I'll come back to that in a second, but you could have a document which is 100,000 pages long. I wouldn't like to proofread it for you, but you can have it. Speaking of proofreading, the Hunspell dictionaries are now available. Now, I need to explain what this is for, but I'll first tell you how to do it. So in the preferences, so you can't see me at the moment. In the preferences, which is over here, sorry, that's not the preferences, they're here. They're in help, I think, on Windows PC. I'm on a Mac here. In the preferences, you go to spell check, and over here, you've got the choice of Diekman or Hunspell dictionary. And the Diekman dictionaries are fantastic for European languages, and I'll explain why they are fantastic for European languages in a moment. So those are the ones you've always had. You can also choose Hunspell. Now, this is not replacing the Creationauts Spellchecker Pro extension, which I strongly recommend, which allows you to upload your own Hunspell dictionaries. The Hunspell dictionaries here are built in, and this is mainly for Indic languages where Diekman just isn't as good. So you can choose and you can switch back in the document, that's no problem, and they'll give you different qualities of dictionaries. But let me just go back to the Diekman, because I'm going to say that for most European language users, you want to stick with the Diekman. And the reason is this. This is a feature that came in a couple of years ago, but not everyone knows it. If you go to H&J's, hyphenation justification, let's go to standard for a second. And what you see here, and if you know this already, please forgive me for teaching you stuff you know, but I think this is brilliant. You can set the prevalence of hyphenation. So I hope that's big enough to see on the screen. I know everything's a bit small sometimes, so they have increased the quality. But otherwise, do it yourself. You can go, it's normally on prevalent. You can go to aesthetic, nominal, and compounds only, or you can go to everywhere. Now, why is that? Well, partly because it's a feature of Diekman, which nobody else has implemented. This is only in QuarkXPress. But partly because as a typographer and as somebody who's setting books, and I just ordered 10,000 copies of book on Monday, very scary. I have more problems with hyphenation and clients than anything else. Clients don't notice hyphenation in other people's documents. but they do in their documents. They want to take all the hyphenation out. Well, of course, if you take the hyphenation out, then you're going to be left with these lines that are drawn right out. They look ridiculous. But yeah, sometimes the computer does put more hyphenation in than you want. So you can select in the Diekman dictionaries what kind of hyphenation you want. That's a really good feature. But for Indic languages, so I said that not everything is for everyone. If you're not doing Indic languages, this won't be such a big feature for you. But for Indic languages, especially, you can put the Hunspell on and it will use those dictionaries. Now, let's move on to something which is more general. So I mentioned that you can go to 100,000 pages, and you do this using the books feature. So I just got that up on Windows books. If you're watching in black and white or in some kind of very low resolution, you can do this yourself. And I'm just going to load up a book I made for this purpose. And if you've not used books before, they can be a bit fiddly. And again, we're going to come back to that in a second. But a book allows you to have 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or maybe 100 different layouts in different documents, which you pull together into one thing. Now, in the old days, that could be to get over the 2,000 page limit, and it still can. Again, I don't want to proofread it if you're doing more than 2,000 pages, but it's also if you've got 15 different people working on different projects, you want to just pull them into one thing. And you've always been able to then output that, export as PDF. We've got 2 new features here. One of them is export to ePub. So previously, if you had a very long book, which was just not because of the page limit, but because it was so heavy, hard to work with, and you wanted to break into different chapters, so you didn't reflow everything, and you were using the book feature, if you wanted to make an ePub, you had to actually get it into one project. You no longer have to do that. Export as ePub, and it will export just like any other ePub. By the way, Amazon no longer recommends using their Kindle Gen software, which we used to use. They now say, if you want to make it for Kindle, make it as a regular ePub, and Amazon will convert it for you. But you can now ePub it straight from a book. And if that's not enough, if you've got 15 different documents that are hard to work with, you can also now export as a project. So you can put all of these files into one new project. I've already called that book example. I'm going to call it something else now, where you then, and that's now saved as a new project. We can open that. And you'll find that those 2 layouts, those 2 books, are now different layouts of the same project. That is highly useful when you're working with a lot of different people. You can actually get all of the files in, make them into a book, and then make them into a single project. Now, I need to just point out here that QuarkXPress's support of ePubs is dramatically better than anybody else's. You always get people comparing. I'm not going to name other products, but there are products that say, we are just as good at QuarkXPress. Don't do ePub at all. Not doing an ePub, if you're publishing physical books, is now just losing market share. So again, if you don't work with ePubs, that's not a problem. But if you're anything to do with publishing books, then you need to offer ePub along with your physical. Otherwise, it just looks like the job's not finished. So convert book to ePub, convert book to project. They're both in this books window, books. You can add chapters to your book. I'm just opening that book there. You can move them around afterwards if you want to, but now in addition to doing a PDF, you can also export as ePub and as project. And if you want to do it other way, you can use the ... menu here if for whatever reason. If you've not worked with books before, but you're having problems with very heavy documents, which are just slowing you down, or you're having a lot of different people working on different things and you want to put them together, then books is well worth looking at. Now, just while we're talking about slowing you down, QuarkXPress 2023 is not yet Apple Silicon native. It is Apple Silicon compatible. It works fine. This is a silicon machine that I'm working on right now. The next iteration, which will be Q1, so January, February, March, will have the silicon, full native silicon. Now, before you say my life will not be complete until I have full silicon, I'm going to say that on my other applications, my Apple applications, for most of them, it doesn't make a lot of difference. So do not expect that your life will suddenly zip past when it goes silicon, because it won't. The only thing that really seemed to buck its ideas up was Final Cut Pro. And it didn't initially. When Silicon first came out, they very proudly announced Final Cut Pro. I actually know the person who leads that particular software project. They announced it's Apple Silicon compatible, everything. But it wasn't any faster. And then about 6 months later, they suddenly improved the speed. So they got something there. But for most software, it's not going to be that much different, but it will be coming, I'm told by Quark, and I don't work for Quark, I need to say that, but I'm told it will be coming in Q1 of 2023. And that's part of your maintenance plan, if you've got a maintenance plan, or if you've got a subscription. Right. So I said there's something for everyone, but not everything is for everyone. Two things that really are for everyone. So the first one is picture content variable. Let's just come back out on my screen here. So greetings from Brussels. I live just in Brussels. I was actually at the European Parliament this morning. That's why I'm wearing my suit. I actually wore a tie this morning. I haven't worn a tie for about 4 or 5 years, but I had to wear a tie, but I've taken it off now. Anyway, so you've got this wonderful picture of the atomium. There's only one problem. And we've all had this problem. It turns out that the atomium is actually a copyrighted building. Yes, in Belgium and even more in France, buildings can be copyrighted. And that means that you can't use a photo of the atomium, even if you took it yourself, without paying additional copyright. And of course, there's all extra things you've got to do. So imagine you've got this on every single page. Well, we now have a way of handling this kind of thing. So obviously you won't usually be having the problem with the atomium, but you quite often have a problem where a client suddenly decides they can't use a particular image, or they want to change all of an image to something else. So we've got this new content variable. So content variables, window, content variables. I'm just going to go to the screen there so you can see that again. So window, content variables. And this little panel comes up. I'm sure you've used this in the past. If you haven't used content variables, they're very useful. They're all text-based. And now I just created this one, Brussels. And all I'm going to do is browse to the picture I want that to be. So if I change that now, it's no longer going to be Brussels, it's going to be something else. I've got the Eiffel Tower. And no matter how many times I've used that content variable in the document, changing it here will change it everywhere. Extremely useful in all kinds of situations. But that's not the only thing it does, because I'm back to Brussels here. Right now, I'm working for the organization I actually work for on something presenting Belgium, France, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Andorra, San Marino, and Malta together. And we're almost certainly going to be doing things where it's going to be the same text, but we just want different pictures on there. And you can now just program these as content variables. And look, we're in Lisbon, we're in Paris, Lisbon, Brussels. Highly useful for where you need it. Now, again, you might be saying, well, I'm never going to use that. Actually, you'd be surprised how often this kind of thing comes up. The ability to manage pictures better is a really good thing. So I'm very pleased about that. There's one more thing, which is number 6, and that is on-screen display of picture status. Now, on-screen display of picture status, it sounds a bit PC, doesn't it? What is your picture status? What is this? Well, as I mentioned, on Monday, I pressed the button to order 10,000 copies of a book for printing in Poland. As I mentioned, I'm in Brussels. Brussels and Poland are a long way apart. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I am always scared. I double check everything hundreds of times, checking the ISBN number again and again and again. But the thing that most worries me, most annoys me, particularly when you're working on different computers is when you discover that the image you want, which you're going to output, at the point of outputting it, you're ready, the printer is waiting, the deadline is there, and it comes up and it says, picture has changed or is unavailable. It's like, where did I put that picture? And if you're working with Dropbox and things like that, it can be a real issue. So I don't know how easy it is to see, but in the top corner here on this image, you've got a little, I just put it on the big screen again. You've got a little icon here now. And that particular icon is telling me that that image is good. Now, if I were to change that image to, I'm just going to go there and we're going to move that out of the folder for Pexel. So I've gotten this up, the QuarkXPress is built-in stock photography. And come off there. What will happen when I open up the document is it will tell me that that image is no longer there. So it's not checking all the time, otherwise it gets very annoying. But it will tell you long before there's an issue that your image has been updated or it's missing. Preparing that for when you're working to the deadline, that is such a useful feature. Now, again, someone said, well, I love this feature, but it's also annoying, maybe not at this resolution, but at a smaller resolution. So how do I get rid of it? If you don't want to see it, it's view visual indicators, turn it off. You see that changing. So we're up here. You shouldn't be able to see that anymore. If I turn view visual indicators back on, then that's now back on there. You should be able to see that up there. Now, just something else that I want to mention, because managing those kinds of things is a bit tedious. If you're not using view sets, where you go from authoring view, so it shows all of the things like paragraph ends, through to default view, which just shows the default things, through to view sets, output preview, which will also give the trim. That's well worth using. Again, I want to emphasize that QuarkXPress can be so streamlined and can be so effective in improving your workflow. You've got to make it do it. So I'm using quite often palette sets. I've got a general one, which I use again and again. It's going to come up in a second. You can see that it's more crowded. But using those different view sets for what the screen shows, I'm going to go authoring view there. And again, that's a feature that's been there for years. But quite often people say, well, I've never heard of that. Yeah, you can even turn hiding on for docked palettes, so they just disappear. Anyway, that is coming back to my main screen in the default mode. And we'll do F7 to just hide those. That is the new features in QuarkXPress 2023. More will come. They're updating throughout the year, and particularly for Mac users, that Mac Silicon in Q1, that's the first quarter of 2023. But I'm very pleased with this, and I've got to say this is very stable on my machine. So again, if you're having difficulties with this particular version, then I'd say contact technical support, because they really want to squash bugs. They really want to get it right. Anything that's not working for you is probably not working for somebody else as well, but it is working on their machine, and so they don't know it's not working. They will only know if you tell them. But certainly I've been using it every day since it came out, and I've not had any difficulties at all. Just occasionally something will go wrong, as it does with all software, and quite often you just give it another piece of software has crashed and caused Quark to stop working. But if that happens, when you start Quark up again, it will offer to recover your documents for you. And again, that's a new feature a couple of versions ago, but well worth using. Dan, back over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Martin. Very, very clear, very helpful, very valuable as always. So yeah, really bringing some of these new features to life, which is fantastic. So for everyone that's joining us, if you've got any questions, please do submit your question using the Q&A box that you should see kind of down here somewhere on the bottom of the screen. And then we've got a bit of time put aside now to look at those. So Martin, we've had a few already, so I'm just going to throw some of these at you if that's okay. And yeah, and then we'll see where it takes us. So first one, is it possible to convert a project to a book format?
The book feature just puts projects together. So let me go to this book. All that's happening here is that I'm selecting a project that then becomes a chapter. So you can convert a project into a chapter. If you want to take pages from a project and then split it out, then you want to use utilities cloner, and where you can actually then tell it which pages to use, and then put destination, a Quark file, or a new project if you want to. That's not available here for various reasons. So let me show you that again. So that's utilities cloner, and it'll come up with this thing here. So we'll just get that on the screen. Utilities cloner, and then you can tell it how many pages to move to a new Quark file, and then you can simply, using the book feature, then put those projects into a book. That's entirely possible. In fact, I did that when I was working on my original Quark books from 2016, and I realized that because I had, I think, about 600 illustrations, it was just too much, and this is quite a long time ago now, much slower machine. So I split it out into different chapters for the book using the cloner feature and worked on from there. The advantage now, of course, is I can convert it back to a project if I want to. You can, even with cloner, actually, if you've got a file open, put the pages of one into another project. So if you've got several layouts, which is what the book feature will create when you convert from book to project, it will put each chapter into a layout in the same project, but cloner can also then send all of those into a single layout. So utilities cloner, really useful bit of kit, that particular thing.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Martin. Got another question here. So can you embed audio, video, and pictures in the same document and convert to ePub?
Right. You can put so anything in a book which is worked as an ePub will convert correctly to an ePub. That just will happen. You can put audio, video, and things like that into an ePub, but not all ePubs are equal. You've got essentially two different kinds of ePub. You've got flow ePub and fixed layout ePub. Without checking the specifications, I couldn't promise you this, but I'm pretty sure that interactive features like audio and video are not available in flow ePub. Or if they are, you can usually put them in QuarkXPress, but will not be readable by anything like a Kindle. In the fixed layout ePub, you can put much more in, but I would always say when doing those kind of ePubs, check with the browser or the book reader that your target audience is going to be using. So if you're preparing it for Amazon, check with a Kindle viewer, because there's quite a lot of things that you can put in a fixed layout ePub, but which will just be either blanked out or will be static in some readers. There are not many readers that read absolutely everything. So I would always check it. But yes, you certainly can have interactive content in ePubs. And if you've got different books, it will ePub it the same way. I think most of the time you'll be using flow ePub, and we talked about that last time, which is where you're going to use the articles palette. Just come up with that over here, and where you tell it which things are to go into the article, and then you can give it additional information, like if I go to here for a second, let me just show you on my screen. I'm on the articles palette, so that's window articles, and I can then even tell it things like when you see normal, use this. I haven't got any other style sheets, but you can map a regular print, a regular print paragraph style sheet or character style sheet to an ePub one, so that you can have the same layout without having to change it, which you can then output an ePub with everything in the right fonts and everything for the ePub, but also output as a book without doing any violence to your design.
Okay. No, great, thanks for that. Very, very helpful. And there's I think a follow-on question to that, actually, Martin. Is it necessary to have a document as a book to create an ePub?
No. You can go straight from any Quark document to ePub. And again, the two ways of doing it. If you've got a digital layout, and I actually use the digital layout for this thing because it just happens to fit the screen, then you can go straight to a fixed ePub output, and that's going to offer you. Let me just show you on the screen. So right on the screen here, you've got reflow or fixed. If you've got a regular document which is not begun as a digital document, you can convert it to a digital layout if you want fixed layout. And again, I've done that, but more usually, if it's for a book, you would specify the articles, and then it would do the reflow. And that means that whatever instructions the user gives to their book reader, it will honor those. It will make things bigger and smaller and so on. It messes your layout up. That's inevitable. That's how reflow ePub works. But you can make it better or worse with a little bit of care. So again, anything interactive, always check it a few times. But yes, you can go straight from any Quark layout to ePub without having to go through book. The new feature is if you've got a book, you can now ePub it directly, but you've always been able to do that straight from a regular document. Great,
no, that's really clear. So this one relevant, I think, for the spell check feature. So the question is, please review the setting hyphenation options and their various effects. Yeah. So
only on the Diekman spell checkers. Let's go back to preferences, spell check. So again, you can see it on the screen, and I can do Diekman or Hunspell. On the Diekman, so I'm on Diekman now. If I go to H and J's, so it's edit H and J's, and I'm going to pick standard, but I can make a new one if I want to. For auto hyphenation, you do not have to have auto hyphenation turned on. We usually do, but you don't have to have it. You can then change the strictness level from as 2017 and earlier, which was up to 2017, or to prevalent, which is the default. But you can have more hyphenation by going to everywhere, or less and nicer by going to aesthetic, really less by going to nominal. And if you go to option 1, it only hyphenates things which actually already have a built-in hyphen in them. So know-how, if you spell that no hyphen how, it would only hyphenate there. So, okay, that still does some hyphenation. Most of the time, I tend to use aesthetic because I do want books to look nice, but prevalent is the typical selection in desktop publishing. And if you really want to have a lot of hyphenation because you've got very narrow columns and it just looks really wrong without it, go to prevalent. And that's all dictionary based for the Diekman dictionaries. So you still get hyphenation with the Hunspell, but it doesn't have these dictionaries where it actually tells you this is a good hyphenation, this is a less good hyphenation, and so on.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up. I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, some of those options there are going to make the text look a little bit more attractive with the layout, depending, as you said, on the width of the columns. But yeah, preference, I guess, to what you want the end result to look like. Okay, so we've got another question here, and I think it's a little bit of a follow-on question from when we were just looking at the process for obviously turning creating the ePubs. Sorry, so just bear with me on this for a second. So design and so in the book function, design and write a chapter as a document, then use the cloner to make the next chapter with the similar design and elements, then use the book function to put documents in as chapters. So chapter 1 for one doc, chapter 2, etc. Like a folder holding your documents. Then when you build 10 chapters, how do you export the whole book function into one PDF? How does the book function do that?
That's been there for a long time, actually. So once you've done that, click on export here. So I'm on my books palette over here. I'm clicking on export here. If you can't remember what the symbols are, just hover over them and a little bit of text help will come up. Or you can always use the ... menu at the top. Export book as PDF, and it will then export it. And if you've got numbered pages, it will number them consecutively. It does quite a lot of other things. Because I haven't used the book function for a while, but it really does a lot of things. But you need to synchronize first. So if you've been working on your chapters, they don't know what the page numbering is unless you do synchronized chapters first. So you set one chapter as your master chapter, and that will then synchronize the style sheet. So you don't want the font size changing from chapter to chapter. And also it will ensure that page numbering and things like that are correct. And then you export, you can actually export a single chapter as a PDF, but you can export the whole document as a PDF, and it will all come out of one PDF. I do need to say, you do not need to use the book feature to have chapters in a regular book. I do quite a lot of books, and for any kind of narrative book, like a novel or flowing text narrative, I'll just do the whole thing in one Quark layout. It's really not an issue to have a 300-page novel or book like that, or a narrative non-fiction book, all in one document. And that's going to be a lot easier than putting things into chapters in a book. So although the feature is there, you're not obliged to use it. One of the things I always say about QuarkXPress is the way you're using it is already the right way. So if it's working for you, that's good. There are additional features. There's always more to learn. This software goes incredibly deep. But if you know a way, keep using your way until you need to do something else. And then have a look at the help. I still have some books available up to 2018. There's video tutorials available, but there's usually an answer to the question, but there's no reason why you should have to use a feature that you're not currently comfortable with or haven't got experience using.
Yeah, good point. Similar to your comment earlier, there's not everything is for everybody, but there'll be something for everybody. So here, I think we're almost out of the questions now, but just here's more of a theoretical one, maybe, Martin, or just to think if there's a workaround maybe for this. So the question is, I find picture fit very useful, but often need to then adjust, so have to change it to none.
Yeah.
So the question is, well, not really a question, but additional option for picture fit equals none would be good. Is there any workaround with that, or is that just something you have to kind of look at?
No, I have this problem every week. So I actually use QuarkXPress to prepare stills for video. And so it's 1980, so it's 1080 by 1920, so HD video. And so I want the still to fill the video.
Yeah.
to fill the screen. And mostly I use fill, but I don't always want to use it. Well, if you go to item styles, you can simply create an item style where if we go to plus here, if you go to picture, apply, picture fitting, none, fit, fill, or stretch, exactly the same thing. You can create an item style which does fill, and an item style which is identical in every other respect, except it does fit. And so all you've got then to do is just click on that. But if you don't want to have that panel open, you can actually add a shortcut, whatever shortcut you haven't currently used. So you can just go bang, and that will then change that particular thing to not fill, but to non-fill. Now, as it happens, you can do that a different way. If you don't want to use item styles, you just want to be able to go always with a key shortcut to change any box, even if you don't want to change the item style, then you can create your own key shortcuts with pretty much anything you want. So I don't use that particular one, though I think I might this week, actually, because I do use that quite a lot. I agree, clicking on that thing is annoying. But I think I might this weekend move to doing that with a key shortcut, because that's a really good idea. I hadn't thought of that. I actually use a key shortcut always for tables, which I just assign this to, I think it's Command Mantissa, maybe it's not. Yeah, just to split and unsplit. And that's just really useful for me. I do that quite a lot. I just want that. So I just created my own shortcut to merge them and split them. But you can create any shortcut you like in the preferences. Let me go back to that. So preferences and then key shortcuts. If you're on a Windows PC, then the preferences, I think, are in the help or possibly the window menu, not in the QuarkXPress menu. That's a Mac thing. Or you can create an item style, back to our item styles over here, where you actually tell it, select picture, apply, picture fitting, stretch, fill, or fit. And if you don't click anything else, it won't change anything else about that particular picture. Now, obviously, if you've got an item style, you want to keep it on that, then you probably want to use the other method, using the preferences. But for most of what I'm doing, actually, I don't just want it to be not fill, I want to go to none, but I also want to make sure it's in exactly the right place. And again, those are features I can set with the origin across, the width and height and so on.
No, that's great. Yeah, really, really great. And I think with that, we're pretty much out of questions, apart from this last one, Martin, which is, how do we hire Martin as a consultant? Which I take as a very good sign that today's session was well received.
I'm afraid I generally do branding, and I've kind of moved into strategy and elections right now. So I'm afraid that my prices are branding prices rather than DTP training prices. So I don't want to make a pitch here, but if I told you what they were, I think you'd probably say, well, you're not worth that. And I'd probably agree with you. I wouldn't pay me that much per hour just to show me where the shortcut keys are.
I'm sure you'd
but
be worth every penny.
If you've got a quick query and you Facebook message me, I'll usually answer it. Though I'll sometimes answer it when I'm really busy until Friday. If you actually, instead of saying, have you got any time, just put the question in, you're more likely to get an answer there and then than saying, have you got any time? Because sadly, life getting in the way, I don't always have a lot of time. But very often, if you've got a question, then I might know the answer. And if I don't know the answer, I'll probably go and find out, because I am curious about things. You know, how do you do that? That's interesting. And quite often I learn things by people asking me questions. So I'm always happy to take your questions. I may not be able to answer them, and I may not have time to answer them, but don't let it deter you from asking. And asking is free. And if I give you an answer there and then that's also free. I don't think I've ever charged anyone for answering a question. If you want to have a couple of hours of my time, then that does come at branding prices. But I'm not going to charge you unless we agree first. But you wouldn't usually do that. But thank you very much for the question. It's very generous of you to ask.
No, that's wonderful. So I think with that, Martin, I just want to say, thanks again. Today's session's been very, very informative and very helpful. And thanks everyone that's taken the time to join us, and especially anyone that's submitted a question. It's been a pleasure to have you. And as I said at the start of the session, if you've been joining us today, do tag us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, your favorite social network of choice. Just love to see who's been on board. And let us know what you found most interesting today. What's the feature that you're most excited about, putting into practice or using in your day-to-day work. But with that, enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to see you again on another Quark webinar. Thank you very much.